city. So all of a sudden you had a city like Kaushina, and before the war, let's say if there were 2,000 Jews, all of a sudden there were 6,000 Jews. And whereas before the war, they lived in, let's say, an area as big as Sunrise, all of a sudden they were cut off. Couldn't live beyond, let's say, Oakland Park Boulevard. You had to live south of Oakland Park Boulevard. So people were cramped in, and that causes a lot of sickness. Any questions you want to ask? I really don't know how much. I once went to his school in Costa Rica.
Mm-hmm.
He was taking a class in Holocaust history, and he volunteered me. So I thought it was just his class, but it was the whole school. The children asked questions, but the teachers asked questions. One teacher asked me, how come you didn't run away? It's a good question. But there was no place to run to. You see, the Jews were treated differently than the Poles and the Christians. We had two enemies, the Germans and the Poles. Poland is full of forests, especially where we lived. You can go into the forest and walk straight for 2 days and not come out of the forest, except some little clearings.
Mm-hmm.
So there was places to hide, but you have to eat. And if you went out to the village to beg for food, they caught you, they turned you over, they beat you up, or they killed you themselves. There are some documented incidents, like at Webne, where they burned the Poles. They burned the Jews alive. So the enormity of it is that we had no place to turn to. And like I say, I was a youngster, and I didn't appreciate it until much later, when I became a father and a grandfather. And to this day, when I think of it, I get nightmares. My parents were always active. They were busy. They built a business. They had a family. We had a very big family. My father comes from 9 children, and my mother comes from 9 children. And quite a few of them lived not far from each other. And then all of a sudden, things stopped.
What was it like before the war in your village?
There was, before the war, there was anti-Semitism in Poland. There was anti-Semitism everywhere. You go back, as far back as you want to go, there was anti-Semitism.
Do you feel Polish or your neighbor?
In Europe, we can trace it to the time when the Christianity became the state religion. That's the time of Constantine. Constantine. And in the beginning, if you, I don't know how much you read about it, they didn't bother with the Jews because they bothered with each other. There was a lot of interfighting, and this church didn't believe in this church, and the Roman Church killed a lot of people. They accused them of heresy if they didn't follow Rome, and they killed them. But after they got the upper hand, they turned to the Jews. The Jews were restricted. The word ghetto, the first ghetto in the world was in Italy. They restricted, they couldn't practice this trade or that trade or the other trade because the guilds were very strong and the Jew could not practice it. So to make a living, they were traders. And they were traders and they were accused of being hucksters. Another thing is that the Jews were literate. If you go back far in Christian history, the only people that learned to read or write were the monks, the church. So if some rich guy, in order to keep going, they hired a Jew. Jews contracted to collect the taxes. So the peasants looked at them as tax collectors, but they had no choice. They couldn't own property. There were expulsions. There were pogroms. So anti-Semitism goes back as far as Christianity. The Muslims also practiced that, but not that much. The Jews, read history, they got along better in Muslim countries than they did in Christian countries.
What about in your specific village? Were your neighbors, did you feel Polish? Do
I feel Polish?
Did you, before the war,
Did I feel Polish? I don't know what you mean by, let me put it this way. I live in America, I feel American.
Mm-hmm.
But I never felt Polish. I never felt any, it's difficult, you see. As a child, if you're here, you've heard a lot of the word discrimination. We went to school, we had to go, there was the law. When you were 7 years old, you had to go to a secular school. It was a mixed school, Polish kids and Jewish kids. And you were never right. I started school when I was 7. In the little town where we lived, I was very comfortable. I didn't feel any discrimination. I played with little boys that my father played with their father. But when we moved to Kruszyn, it was altogether different. You know, you as a student yourself, you know that you're doing good. You're handing a paper. You know that this paper is good. At the same time, you know you're not going to get a very good mark on it. If you run into a problem, you had a fight, you were never right. So how can they expect for me to feel Polish when this is the kind of treatment that you get? Mm-hmm. A Jew very seldom went to a Polish court. If he had, because he would never win. Jews couldn't go to university. They went to university, they had to sit in a special corner. And only so many of them were eligible to go.
This was before the war.
That's before the war. The church openly preached, don't buy by the Jew. Don't buy from the Jew. Swede or Swever, buy from your own.
So many Germans and so many
in Germany,
Hungarians say that they felt Hungarian, they felt German, they didn't understand, they were close with their neighbors.
In Western Europe, there was anti-Semitism all over. Poland claims that they never expelled the Jews, and it's true. Jews lived in Poland over 1,000 years. They never officially expelled. Mm-hmm. But it went in waves. And it all can be traced to the church.
I want to hear more of your story. So you were in Kozienice, and then the war broke out, and you were sent to Pionki.
And I was in Kozienice, and the system was from that. There was what we call the Jewish Gemeinde, like that was not a German creation. Before the war, Jews looked after themselves. They had like what you call here a foundation. There were people elected that looked after certain things. And in the war, when the Germans came in, they treated with them. So if they wanted 150 people for work, they told those people, I want today 150 or 1,000 people to work. So they sent out cards that you had to go to work. In the beginning, they sent for my father. I was too young. We still had everything. So my father paid to that Gemeinde a certain amount of money, and they hired a poor guy, okay, and they sent him, and it was not for everybody. But then they took almost everything away from us. They circled around the block, and they went to search from door to door. Wherever they found merchandise or anything useful, they took it away. Before they did that, we went out to the village and we could barter for food. We didn't use money. Money was no good. Well, there was a form of currency. But we used stuff with the Poles, and they gave us flour, potatoes, eggs, food. Then two things happened. All of a sudden they closed the ghetto. And if they caught you outside, they killed the Jews. So lots of people, we still took a chance. My sister and I, you sort of made yourself look as Polish as possible. My sisters and I, my mother went once and they caught her and they beat her up. So my mother couldn't go anymore. So my sister and I, we went with 2 packs, we had shirts in there and underwear, And we used to go with my mother, so we saw what she did, and we still did it. And it was a risk, but we went out very in the morning, very early in the morning. You snuck out, and then you snuck in the next morning. I remember we finished, so we walked back as far as the Jewish cemetery, and we stayed by the cemetery overnight until it sort of by daylight was very safe to run in. So we did that. Then they sent my father should go to work, but my father was very sick. So I used to go for him. I was husky, and they accepted me.
What kind of work did you do?
All kinds of work. Cleaned the roads, you cleaned it from snow, you cleaned barracks, they sent you here, they sent you there. 10 people go over there, clean the barracks, all kinds of work.
This was Pionki?
Pardon?
This was in...
No, that was in the ghetto.
Okay.
And in the evening you went home. Now, one day, I went for my father to work, and they didn't let me go home. They took us all and put us in about a small group, about 50, 60 people.
How old were you?
Pardon?
How old were you?
At that time, I was not quite 14. I was 13. It was
And your
in the
parents,
month of March.
your parents and your sisters were in the ghetto,
Yeah,
and they took you.
yeah. And instead of going home, they put us in the jail overnight. The next day, some men came. The men were from Silesia, and they took us out. They took us about 18 kilometers away from the town to work.
What were you thinking? Do you remember?
There was nothing to think. You had to go.
But were you
Yeah,
wondering
what I was thinking
happening?
was, why me? I was mad. I was only 13. And that was not Pionki yet. What the Germans did, they took a huge area around the Kruszyn, an area, and they threw out all the Poles from those villages, and they cleared the villages, they burned them, and they built an army camp. And the army camp was built by companies. Every company was different. The ones that put in the roads, they were called Keller, and there was another company called Guts. I worked for a company called Oberschlesische Baugesellschaft, which means Upper Silesian Building Company. And what we did, we put the plumbing in the showers, and we put the pipes for to go to this, like a septic tank. That was in March of 1942. Every week a wagon came and they brought parcels from home. Food they didn't have to send us, they didn't have. We had food they gave us enough in that camp. But I made a parcel of my dirty clothes and sent it back, and my mother sent me fresh clothes. The first thing she sent me was my tefillin and my siddur. That was still Orthodox. And every week I got a clean shirt, a clean underwear, and socks, etc. I ran away from there. It wasn't hard to do. And I came back to the ghetto. And my mother begged me to go back. She said, look, they were starving. They had no food. So I stayed over Rosh Hashanah in the house, and then I went back. They didn't punish me or anything.
What was the name of the camp?
It was not a concentration camp. It was a labor camp.
You know the name of it?
The name of it we used to call it Szyczki, because the nearest village was Szyczki. Then we went from there to Kruszyn for a little while, for maybe 4 weeks. We were there, and all we did there was unload all the provisions that came for the whole area, unloaded into storage, and then from every camp, like from the Germans and from work camps, they came for their rations, we loaded on their wagons. And we were there till November.
Were you working with other Jews, or were there
Other
Russians?
Jews.
Or
No, only
Just
Jews. The overseers were Silesian.
or what?
They were from Silesia. They were like indigenous Germans that lived in Poland before the war.
Were they nice to you, or?
They were not very nice people. They were not very nice people. They had whips and they beat and they were not very nice people. So then they came to Kruszyn and they took us all in trucks and they took us to Pionki. Pionki was a munitions factory. And in Pionki, again, it was not a concentration camp. There were people there that were never hungry. I was always hungry. They gave you 1 kilo and 75 grams of bread a whole week. But the problem was, they didn't give it to you a portion a day. They gave it to you all in one day on Sunday. By Wednesday I had no bread. I was always hungry. My clothes, I didn't get from home anymore. And they didn't give clothes. In the concentration camp, everybody was dressed alike. Here you had your own clothes. I was walking around in rags. So it was very, very difficult. And I was only 14 years old. I couldn't accept why me? What did I do wrong? There were people there from the same town, from Kaushina, that were there like families. And they came in with money, and they had everything. They weren't hungry. They had everything. They weren't hungry. So that was the problem. But in the ghetto, when I went back, it is, I think myself, that not enough has been written about the misery of our people in those ghettos.
So you went back when you were at Pionki. You went back to the ghetto.
No, not from Pionki. From Pionki was difficult to run away. And I was in Szyczki, I ran away.
So what happened at Pionki? How long were you there?
In Pionki I was there from November of 1942 till June 1944.
Making munitions?
Yeah, no, I was particular, my job was the hydroelectric. The electricity was all generated by coal. And we worked supplying the coal to the ovens.
Who ran the camp?
It was dirty, and it was in the beginning, it was very hard because there were no people. Later on they started bringing in more people, it became a little easier. We were supposed to work 8 hours, 3 shifts. But sometimes we worked two shifts. Because the Meister wouldn't accept, there has to be a certain amount of coal. Wouldn't accept, so work another 8 hours.
Who ran that camp?
Pardon?
Who was running the camp?
The Germans.
Germans?
The Germans were running it, but in the almost 2 years that I was there, I never saw a German with a gun. The Ukrainians were the ones that guarded us, that marched us to work, marched us back. See, that's another thing that people don't know about. There was a lot of people that did the dirty work for the Germans. So much so that there were the main director of the camp was Brand. He was overall. He was a German. They set up in that a little bit away from where we were, two brothers called the Kaplans. They set up like they were tailors before the war, and they set up for a tailor shop, to make boots, you know. And they got in very close with this German, and they went and complained that the Ukrainians were abusing us. And he said, well, elect Jewish police, and I'll issue an order that they're not allowed to go inside. And that's what happened. But they still found ways to abuse you, but not so much. So here you had to go to a German to complain about a Ukrainian. And the injustice of it. But that's the way it was. From Pionki I went to Birkenau, Auschwitz.
While you were at Pionki, you heard about your family?
Yeah, we heard before I went to Pionki, we heard that Kruszyn, there was a guy that came up with a bicycle, and I was in Szyczki still. Kruszyn was liquidated in September of 1942, the second day of Sukkot. And this guy came to the gate and said, there's no more Kruszynets. So we knew.
So where were they sent?
Pardon?
Where were they sent? Where were the people sent?
To Treblinka.
And you didn't hear anything of
No,
them?
that was an annihilation camp. There was no work done in Treblinka. There was strictly...
And you knew that when you...
Pardon?
You knew that at the time?
We had an idea that something was going on, but you know, the human mind is, especially youngsters, you're hungry, all you want to do is fill your stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Did we know for certain? No. But later on we knew when we got to Auschwitz in 1944, we knew what it meant, what they call selections. And you had those quite often in Auschwitz. And when I say Auschwitz, Auschwitz was three places: Auschwitz, Birkenau, and Buna. Buna was run by I.G. Farben. It was a factory, huge place. And there they didn't do any annihilation.
What did they do? What work did they do?
There they made selections, and from those that were selected that they couldn't work anymore, they took them to Birkenau.
And there they had the gas chambers.
Yeah.
So you went from Pionki?
Pardon?
You went from Pionki?
From Pionki I went to Birkenau. I stayed in Birkenau 2 days. And then we marched, it wasn't too far, it was a few miles. to Buna. And Buna was not a bad camp. First of all, you got clothes. It was very clean.
Did
And
they give you food?
pardon?
Did they give you food? Food. Were they feeding you?
Oh yeah, they gave us enough to eat. Not to get fat, but every day you got your portion. How long you could last there, I don't know. I wasn't there that long.
How long were you there?
From June, the middle of June, till around, we evacuated on January the 17th or the 14th, I'm not quite sure.
Is that where you got your tattoo?
No, the tattoo I got when I came in.
To Birkenau?
Yeah.
Did you know what was happening in Birkenau?
We already knew. We knew what it was all about. Because there were people that were working in Auschwitz. You could see the chimneys, you could see the...
And you knew your family was gone.
But I knew, at that time I knew I had no family. We knew.
So you were alone? Did you have friends? Was there anybody that you...
I was alone all the time. And from January, when we left, till we were liberated, which was May the 8th, today, when I think about it, I don't know how much in such a short space of time you can pack in so much misery.
Where did you go after Buna?
From Buna we marched to Gleiwitz, which was about we almost walked the whole night. When we got there, it was very disorganized. There was no rations, nothing.
Was it just men in the Buna?
Pardon?
Was it men and women together?
No.
Just men?
No. The men were separate from the women in Birkenau.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was there for 2 days, and then all of a sudden we heard that there was, if you go to the gate, there's a transport, and when you leave, they give you bread. So I went. We went on wagons. They were open wagons. They packed us in like sardines. They did give me a piece of bread. And from there we went to Buchenwald. Because there was so much bombing, it took a long time to get there, 2 weeks. It was unbelievable. When we arrived
2 weeks in the train?
in the train,
In the cattle car?
this particular trip was open cars, like you for coal or
Like, okay.
yeah.
2 weeks.
But by the time we got there were just a few in a car huddled together. That was Buchenwald. I was only about a week there. They took me to a camp called Krawinkel. We called that the bunker camp because we lived in bunkers. If you looked from the outside, all it looked like a little hill with pine trees growing on it. The Germans used it before to store ammunition. And it was terrible there. Everybody got sick. There was absolutely no water. Everything was disorganized. They didn't have, the Germans themselves, they didn't The only thing they still had was the SS. It was terrible. Everybody, all they did was give us a little black coffee in the morning with a very thin slice of bread. And when we came back from work, they gave us a little soup, which consisted of grated potatoes, like you make for latkes, you grate, and they put it in and nettled it out. So it was actually almost raw. And everybody was sick. Everybody was sick. I had two friends that were leading me under the arm to go out to work. Finally, I gave up. Again, I was lucky. See, like I said, they were disorganized, but they had a little system. From Krawinkel, if you didn't go to work and everybody left, they came around with a truck, and whoever was left, they took and put them on the truck and took them to Ordruf, which wasn't far away, maybe 5 kilometers. In Ordruf, they did nothing. They just dropped you off there. They didn't give you any food, there was no water, nothing. The only people, there was two barracks outside of Ordruf, just outside. They were the only people that got food, because they were the ones that went in, cleaned it, burned the corpses. They didn't have any ovens, so they dug ditches and to burn the dead. That day, when I refused to go to work already, I couldn't. The SS man, the man who was in charge, that day he picked to make an inspection. So he walks around, and I'm sitting on the side of the road, not by myself, but lots of people. And he has a riding crop, and he puts it on my chin. Where do you come from? So I said to him, Buna. He was in Buna. He was in charge of what they call the Arbeitsdienst. That's the SS that were walking around in the plant, in Buna's, we worked, and to see that nothing bad happened. He was in charge of them. What block did you stay? So I told him, 46. Oh, by Alfred. I said, jawohl, yes. So he turned around and he gave a scream. Everybody from the kitchen raus. And he looked them over. He took a kid he was a Ukrainian, and he put me in his place. Now all of a sudden I started working in the kitchen to peel potatoes. And I became very friendly with all those that worked there, and they were all white Russians. And that helped me sort of till the end, because they are very well at organizing things. They can smell. And we went from there, we went to another place.
So there weren't any Jews working in the kitchen?
There were Jews,
yeah,
but there were even in Buna, even in Auschwitz, there were Gentiles too, not as many. There were politicals, there were thieves, broke the law. The difference between there were only two people that were done to what was done to them because they were Jews or Gypsies. If a Paul found himself in a concentration camp, he must have done something. Maybe he was a communist, maybe he was a thief. They took him out from the prisons.
So you were in the kitchen?
Yeah, I worked in the kitchen, and it gave me a chance to recuperate. And from there we went to a place, we called it the Zeltenlager, because a Zelt is a tent, but we lived in tents. Not for too long. It was already around the beginning of April. And then they marched us back.
Is this 43 already or 44?
What we did there we worked hard. We blasted tunnels into the mountains, the Thüringen mountains in Thuringia.
At the tent camp?
Pardon?
At the tent?
Yeah. We blasted. What you do, you have a jackhammer, and you drill a hole in the rock. You pack it with dynamite, and then you blast it. A lot of people got killed because they were too weak to. The guy didn't give enough time. But we cleaned out the rubble. We found them. They couldn't run away fast enough. So the rocks that we blasted killed them. But it was already, you could see it was the end. It was April 1945 when they marched us out from there to Buchenwald. And in Buchenwald, must have been the end of March or something like that. In Buchenwald, I only stayed overnight. The next day they took up and walked to Weimar, which is about 5 miles. And they took us on the train. And that transport was an infamous transport. We were 5 weeks on the trains. No food, no water.
How many people?
People ate grass, they ate anything they could get their hands on.
Did most of the people on the train
Again, I was lucky. Whenever they were strafing, the Allies were bombing and strafing because we were on the railroad tracks. And so were the army. They let us run away. So one day we ran out into the field, and I ran with those Russians. And out in the middle there is a building, and we look in, full of wheat. So we threw ourselves at the window, broke the window, and everybody had a blanket. And I scooped up the wheat into that blanket. And we ran out and went back to the wagons. So I just ate the kernels of wheat. Sometimes if we stayed in, if we were broken down or waited for the line to be repaired, so we cooked it. And the Russians protected me, these white Russians.
White Russians?
Pardon?
White.
Oh, because otherwise I was a young boy, there were men there that didn't have anything to eat. They looked after me. When my Stephen was bar mitzvah in Michigan, a man walked up, a man we had invited, walked up to the band leader and he asked him, he says, I want to say a few words. So his name was David Slavetsky, but from home. I knew him because he came from Kielce to Pionki. So I knew him in Pionki. And I met him in Buchenwald on the transport. So he gave him the microphone and he called people's attention. He said, I would like to say here that if it wasn't for Joe Goldberg, I would be dead on the railroad someplace in Germany. And everybody, oh, why don't you say something? I said, what is there to say? And there really wasn't anything to say. I knew him and I helped him. I couldn't help otherwise. First thing you do is look out for yourself. But I was lucky because the wheat isn't grass, it isn't leaves.
Mm-hmm.
People used to shimmy up, it was April, so already there were things were blooming a little bit. Used to shimmy up trees and eat that.
So you were 5 weeks on the way
Yeah. It was.
to Vilna, you
There more people died after the war. A lot of people died. They took us to Theresienstadt, which was in Czechoslovakia, their transport.
Mm.
I would say that 80% of the people in that transport did not survive. It was terrible. We were in a room and you didn't know who was dead and who was alive. And the stench of it, people were very sick. I knew one thing, that if I don't get out of there, and the Russians came in, they did a wonderful job. They went right through, but they left women armed in the army. All the doctors, medics, and they did a tremendous job.
What camp was this?
Huh?
What camp was it?
Theresienstadt.
Theresienstadt. That's liberated by the Russians?
Yeah, they had masks that in Czechoslovakia. And they went around and they felt who was alive, and they didn't ask anybody. They just grabbed hold by the feet who was dead, took them out. They had people burning them outside the and those that were sick, they set up hospitals. And right away we got food. But I knew one thing, that I cannot stay there. I had nightmares about that place for the longest time. The smell. But the quarantine there I was. Couldn't go out. So a couple of us let ourselves out down a window. And but nothing to lose. We knew they wouldn't shoot us. And we left Theresienstadt and we went to Prague. The people of Czechoslovakia, it's difficult to find words to praise them. I'm not that eloquent. How they treated us. At the same time, when Jews went back to Poland, the Poles killed them. But in Czechoslovakia, they didn't know what to do with us. We went to a hotel. On the way, when we got out, it looked like a hurricane had struck the place. The Germans, they threw everything in, they ran. And we went through their baggage and looking for food. But we found cigarettes. We knew that cigarettes is like money. So we had cigarettes. We came to Prague, I sold some cigarettes, I had money. But I wouldn't take a penny, wherever you went. A restaurant, sit down. Then you went to pay, they only had to look at me to see. No hair. Oh, skoncentraku. Yeah. You don't pay.
So where did you stay in Prague?
I stayed in Prague about 2 weeks. Then they started to rounding people up because it was getting impossible. Everybody, it was, like I say, it was all bad about the ghetto. It's like in this apartment, there's 2 of us.
Mm-hmm.
Now how will we manage it if it's 12 here?
Were you by yourself or were you with friends?
No, I have some friends.
Like 4 or 5 of you?
Yeah, there were about 5 of us. So what I'm trying to say is that they were very, very good. They caught you in the street, where are you from? If you said France, but that was the last place to be liberated. May the 8th, the Russians liberated Theresienstadt. That was the last place. And the Germans kept taking everybody there, like there was some kind of treasure that they were, Anyway, so they took you and they gave you a parcel of food and they waited for the next train and they put you on the train to go west. If I would say I was from Poland, they would put me on a train to go east. Mm. But when they asked me where I was from, I was already getting sick. I had a high fever. And I met a man in Prague, and he was from a little town called Buchenwald. So Polish and Czech is very similar. And I spoke Czech. So he said to me, you ever remember Buchenwald? So when they asked me, where are you from? I said, Buchenwald. That's where they sent me. And when I came, I don't remember how I came there, when I came there. When I woke up, I was in a room, in a bed, clean sheets. And there was a German Shitzke sitting by the bed. He commanded one that looked after me. And I got very healthy very quick.
How old were you?
I was 17. One day I was going to Prague. That's when I met this man at his sister's in Prague. So I was going just to visit them again. And I met some boys on the train. Oh, where are you? Where have you been? So I told them, what are you going to be? We have our home. We're all going to Palestine. So I went to Prague, I said goodbye to those people, then I went back to Buchenwald and said goodbye to those people. And I went back to Theresienstadt. I went into the Kinderheim. And that's how I came to England.
To England? Mm.
If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them for you.
Yeah, how did you get to England?
Wait, hold on.
I got to England, the British government donated from the army, from the Air Force, Lancaster bombers. That's how they took us. No passenger planes.
The Lancaster bombers.
Yeah. We were in Prague, when we left Theresienstadt, we were in Prague 1 week, but the weather was bad. So they couldn't take off or they couldn't land. So we were 1 week in Prague and we stayed in a school. It was amazing. The boys went from one movie to the next. We hadn't been all this. So we went to the circus, wherever we went. Nobody took a penny. And on the 14th of August, we arrived in England on VJ Day.
And what did he do?
Pardon?
What did he do once he got to England?
What did I do after that? Well, we had to learn a language. They looked after us very, very well. I am really very lucky that I got to England. Because if I would have gone to my uncle directly from Germany, I wouldn't have stayed.
Where was your uncle?
Well, I had my mother's brother was in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
That's where my cousins were from, Charlie, and well, you didn't know them, but your father did.
Did you have any family? You had your mother's brother.
Pardon?
You had, what other family did you have?
I didn't know that I had anybody. One day a rabbi came to Windermere. He was on his way from Germany. We were the first ones out from Europe. People came to see us like we were in a zoo. And he said that anybody that has relatives in the United States should give him all the information that they have to remember, that they remember. And he will put it in the paper, the Yiddish paper. So I remembered that I had an uncle. I didn't know he was in Canada. I thought he was in America. And my uncle didn't find me, but a neighbor of his read the paper, the Jewish paper, and he ran in and he said, look at this, it's your nephew. So they got in touch with me right away. I was in England over 3 years. I never went formally to school. I couldn't. I had a chance. I did have a chance to go. But I was 17 years old. I couldn't go in and sit with 5, 8 year olds, 6 years, 7 years old. But I learned English very, very fast.
You met grandma in England?
I met your grandma. Well, she belonged to Habonim, which is a Jewish youth group. And they came down to visit us right from the very beginning. And we met that way. And the rest is history.
When they visited you, did you speak English?
When she visited us, no, I couldn't speak English. But she spoke a little Yiddish. But like I say, I would say that when I came over, 3 years later, I was fluent in English. And today, English is my first language. I mean, I speak Yiddish, I speak but English. If I want to say anything, it has to be in English. But the reason that we were lucky is that they looked after us, like, thought out. It wasn't just, first when we came, the whole group was 300, the first 300 that you see this picture, we were all together in a place called Windermere. It's in England, in the Lake District. It's the nicest spot in England. And what happened was, there was a camp there during the war for workers. It was put up, barracks, self-sufficient, that were making hydroplanes. And we took over that camp. Each one had a little room. There was a big social room, like a dining room. There was a sick bay, like a little hospital. And the people that came down to work with us, mostly were German Jews, because that was the only ones we could communicate with. And we were there, and then they started
Mess.
Then they started sending us out in groups from Windermere. And we went to a place called Loughton, which is a suburb of London. And we lived in a beautiful house, a manor house, beautiful gardens. We were there about a year. We couldn't work for about a year and a half until when we came to England. Everybody had to go through medical, and everybody had problems. And from there, we moved to London, Belsize Park. And we were there for a few months. Then they started to send us out to families. In other words, somebody had a room to rent, so they would say to me, get your best friend and you can go and live there. And they subsidized that. We already were able to work, so whatever they decided, let's say that we needed so much. So let's say I made 4 shillings or 5 shillings a week or £1 a week. And I needed £2, so the committee will give you another pound. I don't remember exactly the numbers, but they subsidized us. At the same time, I heard from my family. When I heard from my family, I didn't know that I had anybody else alive. But in point of fact is that I had a cousin that survived, that I didn't know about. He was in Bergen-Belsen. And my aunt and another cousin survived in Russia, and they went to Palestine. But when I came to the States, my aunt found us. My aunt Hannah found us. Had I known that I had an aunt that went to Palestine, especially this aunt, because I knew her, I would never have come to America. But at that time, they were the only family that I had. I don't regret coming to America, but I feel comfortable in Israel. I feel very, very comfortable in Israel. With all the trouble and everything else.
There was a story in The Boys when you were in one of the camps and there was a German soldier beating you and you hit him with a bucket.
No, he wasn't a German soldier. He was a Volksdeutsch, which is one of those indigenous. That was in Pionki. Yeah, I was lucky. It was a stupid thing to do. I signed my own death certificate. But luck, or whatever you want to call it, you see, I was in Pionki almost 2 years. The first 7 months were the worst, next to Krawinkel in those places. I was hungry all the time, didn't have any clothes, and rags. But one time I was going up to where the Poles, they used to, they had a dining room. And I went to that kitchen, and we had a lunch break. And we figured we'd go up there, us boys, and whatever they were leaving, we used to take. So this guy that was working in the kitchen to bring the supplies, an older man, was struggling to carry up a sack of beans to the kitchen, two flights up. And he couldn't do it. So I said to him, well, permit me, I'll do it. So he looks at me, and I took the sack of beans, and I took it up. And then I started to help him. Before you knew it, every day I went with him out to get the food. Every place of work had a German Meister. We had one, his name was Koppich. He was never there, but there was one. And the kitchen also had a German woman, an old woman. She was walking with a cane. She was in charge of the kitchen. And she would come almost every day. And she would see me there. Carrying things up, carrying things down. So she thought I was working there. What happened was, a fellow by name of Brandwein, he lives in Montreal. When I had a day shift, he worked for me. He worked in my place, so I could attend to the kitchen. I risked my life every day because I smuggled out, in the process of making the ammunition, they use it like an ether. But sometimes they got in a batch, it came in tank cars. Sometimes they got in that the Poles said that you could drink it, like vodka. So I went over there and I made a deal with the guy. Whenever you get in with stuff, I'll pay you so much and so much. And then a landsman of mine, I made him make me like water bottles, metal. He worked in a metal shop. He survived Kruger. He's dead now, but he's an older man. Have you seen those water bottles that you put on? He made me 3 of them. Every time I went out, I had one in my belt with my shirt over it. We went to get bread. I gave it to the Meister from the bread. And how did I get the bread? The bread was in shelves. And I went up on a ladder, and Szyczki was holding a sack. And I counted. The Meister went to the door, turned around, walked out. When he walked out, I stopped counting. All of a sudden I had loaves of bread. And things changed like you wouldn't believe. One day I was taking brandwein soup. And this guy, for no reason at all, had a rubber hose. He was drunk. He started beating me. And I said, why the hell is he beating me? And I turned around and I swung my pail. And I hit him in the head and I split his head open. But the Poles right away called the Ukrainians. They came and they got me. They took me to what we call the first gate. And where do you work? I had to tell him I work in the kotlovnia. I couldn't say I work in the kitchen. So they called the meister. He came over and he said, hang him. But unbeknownst to me, a woman in the kitchen, the boys ran up and the people, they told them what happened. She ran and she got the old lady. It was just before Christmas. And the old lady came to the guardhouse, what they call the first guardhouse. And they said, why are you having him here? So the guy told her. And this copper, she's standing there. And he said to her, why do you want to know? So she says, he works for me. He said, no, he works for me. And she had the cane, and she shook the cane in his face. I saw it. So the workshop said, no, we're going to hang him. She says, you will not hang him. For what he did, he'll get punished. But you will not hang him. I decide. In this Kopach, I guess she was better connected than he was. So he threw his hands up and walked out. But she said, no, give him 25 schmitz lashes, and that'll teach him a lesson. But it was a stupid thing to do, after him. Because, like I say, I signed my own. Hitting him was signing my death certificate. But you have to have luck.
You said a couple times the Russians helped you out a lot, like on the train and when you were marching.
Well, because you see, people are people. I was a youngster; they were not old; they were youngsters, and we were sitting there together, you know. And they were human. And they were prisoners like me. The guy that was in charge of the group, because he was the toughest and the oldest, his name was Michal, and he sort of took a liking to me. You see, Russians sing a lot. And I like singing. And whenever they sang, even I didn't know the song, I used to harmonize them. But they did really look after me.
Yeah, there were some stores where they would steal other people's blankets or food.
Pardon?
Where the Russians would steal other people's blankets and food, and they left
that
you
wasn't
alone.
That wasn't the Zeltenlager.
And they left you alone.
Yeah. It was getting cold, especially if we were up in the mountains. When you came home, it was always an alarm, because the bombing was 24 hours. So you would walk through, they would give you the soup, and you'd walk inside, and they'd jump you and take your soup away.
The Russians?
No, yeah.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't touch me, because Michal wouldn't let them. The same thing with the blanket. It's these you know, the reason I look at it, the way I look at it, when people said to me, well, why don't you write a book? No, I gave my story to the boys, you know. The history of the Holocaust has not been written. We are too close to it. We are too close to it. It's indescribable. When I think just myself, and we were no different than anybody else, what my mother had to go through, it beats me up. Because you always come back to the same question. Why? Why? How can a people call themselves civilized when you sometimes see primitive on history or National Geographic, you see primitive movies, people from the caves, they would hit somebody on the head with a club. Okay, they're not about it, they're primitive. But we supposedly outgrew that. We are calling ourselves civilized. Christian society amongst whom we lived, that this could not be possible if they were not conditioned. It is not easy. When they take you into the army, they know it's not going to be easy for you to line up the gun and kill. They train you. You go through basic training. They indoctrinate you. And still, if you're civilized, you learn to shoot when they're shooting at you. So you ask yourself a question. Do you have any idea of the atrocities that were committed by so-called people that are civilized? They tore children in half, took them by the legs and tore them in half. And then they went to Mass and confessed and given absolution. There was a priest in Lithuania, a priest, man of God, that told these people, these Lithuanian volunteers, go out and kill the Jews because you're doing God's work. It boggles the mind.
Still happening.
And that is documented. It's not something that people have dreamt up about.
I know, like Uncle David was interviewed, and they asked him, did you grow up hating Germans? And the answer was no, you had more resentments against the Ukrainians and the Poles.
Yeah. You see, look at it this way. The Germans were told that all their troubles were caused by the Jews. They, of course, it was propaganda, it was lies. But that's what they were taught. It's just like the Arabs now, that teach their children to But you have to ask yourself a question. So you could understand the Germans, they were at war. And they were taught that the Jew was the enemy. But why the Ukrainians? Why the Lithuanians? Why the Poles? The Germans was the enemy.
You want anything to drink? Moniek?
Yes, please. And that is, you see, you know. Fine, thank you. Who's this? Oh, hi, there's just a minute. Faith will take it in the kitchen. I got somebody here. Hold on. Go and tell them I'm going to come and Faith to take you. No, I got it.
Well,
This is part of why, you know, when the war was over, I was 17. I came to England. I expressed myself in one time, but it's not in the boys, it's something that I wrote. That we lived like on two plateaus. On one of them, we were just like everybody else, or tried to be. We went out with girls, we laughed, we sang. That was one level. But the other level was never too far away. I got married, I had children. When I first held my oldest son, I said to myself, there's nobody here except me, but I'm so selfish. Nobody gets any pleasure out of him, only me and his mother. No grandfather, no grandmother, no aunts. You know, when I was a little kid, I was spoiled by my relatives. He had nobody to spoil him. It doesn't, you make weddings, you make bar mitzvahs, it doesn't go away. And at the height of your joy, you can't help but remember. Because my father and my mother would be dead by now. I had 3 sisters. One of them was 7 years younger than I was. And so this, then you get busy, you have to make a living, you have to worry about your children, they go to school, and it's still there. But the mind can only take so much. And then comes a time that you retire. All of a sudden, the tumult stops. And you go back to thinking again. And you look, no, I don't know if I've told you, I was in bad shape. Last year, I had a bed here. I was in hospice. They didn't give me more than 2 months to live. And they sent in a chaplain, comes with a service. And he noticed my arm, the number. Oh, you're one of those. I said, yes. And he starts getting involved in the discussion with me. So he says, have you ever thought why God punishes the Jews so much? So I said to him, our belief, we don't feel that way. We are taught that we are given a right way and a wrong way. Go the right way, we have free will. So if I go and say that God punished me and took my parents away from me, I'm actually saying that Hitler is not guilty. So I said, how about hurricanes? People died. And how about the 50,000 or whatever that died in Vietnam? All those wars. You blame God for that? God didn't make the wars, men made the wars.
So you grew up with an Orthodox upbringing, and after the
Well,
war,
I grew up in an Orthodox home, but that is really that is beside the point. He says to me, well, can I pray with you? I said, well, if you want to pray for me, I'd appreciate it, but I cannot pray with you. He said, well, why not? I said, look, I said to him, if I feel like praying, I put on a kippah and I take my prayer book and I pray directly to God, but you don't. You pray to Jesus to take your prayers to God. We don't believe in that. We only believe in one God. It's you know, I used to go to schools, to high schools, to every once in a while. I don't do it anymore. And it's amazing the questions children ask. And they ask the question because it's a reflection from their parents.
Like what kind of question?
The same thing. I was asked the question, why does God punish the Jews? By a youngster. In his school in Costa Rica, a teacher asked me why I didn't run away. And I told her I was 16. And for me to reach the 17th birthday, I have a better chance staying where I was than running away. Because if I run away, some Paul will kill me. The Germans didn't go into the forest, they were scared stiff. The Poles.
Throughout the Holocaust, did you ever lose faith in God?
Pardon?
Did you ever lose faith in God when you were in the camps? Or did you always believe in Him throughout the war?
Well, Ephraim, you brought up to believe, like everything you used to say is B'yetz Hashem. God's finger makes everything happen. But I was lucky. I had a father who, although he was Orthodox, what you would call here Orthodox, he learned with me a lot during the war, 1940, even up to the whole of 1940. Because he didn't get sick till the spring of 41. And he wasn't so taken up. We are more than just believe in God. So that is not what we are about. That is a Christian thing. Believe in Jesus and you will be saved. We are more in what you do. You can believe in God and be the worst kind of person in the world. And I'll give you an example. Why I feel lucky I had a father like I do. My father, every boy wants to feel big, wants to help his father. So I wanted to help my father on a Tuesday morning when we lived in Kruszyn, and I was only about 7, 8 years old. I wanted to help him in the morning load the wagon to take out to the market. I said, please let me help you. So finally he said, okay. So he got me quietly up so my mother could sleep longer. And we went to the corner. I took the siddur and he put on his tefillin and talis and davened. And I davened. Then we sat down and ate breakfast. Then I helped him carry the stuff. And the man is coming. I knew the man. His daughter and my sister were very good friends. Carrying his talis, going to the synagogue to daven in the morning, Tuesday morning. My father looks at me and he says, Mashallah, seeing him, I eat with a beard. So yeah, this is Altenburg. His davening is like he would pray to a false idol. I was shocked. He says to me, what is his trade? What does he do? Well, the man had a little store. The wife, about 4 kids, I think 4 or 5. And what he dealt with was like paint. And he also sold whitewash. You know what whitewash is? It's like a lye. It comes in big bricks, big chunks. You put it in water and it bubbles and it melts. And in Poland, that's what most of them use instead of paint, to whitewash the walls. So my father says to me, and Mashallah, who will drag out the whitewash to the front? Think. You can daven by yourself. But he left. And left this to do for his wife to do schlepping out. And that is what I was taught. It's not what you say, it's what you do. I give you one other example. It was verified to me by my cousin.
Can you just disconnect? It's Edith and Art.
Yes.
Do you want them to come down here, or do you want to go and see them on Wednesday?
I'd rather, they have to rent a car.
No, Mary's loaning them a car.
So then they better come down here. I don't know what state I'm going to be in.
Okay, so you want them to come down here?
My mother had a brother in Poland, in Lodz. Shmulik, that survived, that we have in Israel, Chava. It's his daughter. That brother was very, very poor. He was really indigent. My mother went to lodge once a month, and she and her two sisters, she had more than two, but those two in particular, helped him. One day my mother on a Friday received a telegram that her brother suffered a stroke. Now remember, my mother was an observant Jewish woman. We had our own horse and wagon, but she didn't want my father to do this. She went next door to Potatsky. She told him to get his wagon ready to take it to Buchenwald to catch the train. She knew that the children didn't have any money, and her brother was sick. Years later, when I came to
That doesn't matter.
Israel, and I met up with Shmuley, he told me, he says, when the order.He came, it was like
Is this
Mashiach.
being recorded?
Yeah.
And he remembered the incident when his father had the stroke and my mother came. She came on the Shabbos. So you
What do you
see,
need to drink?
No, I'm thinking.
you're taught to believe, but that is not enough. I'll tell you something. Your father was here. No, actually, I did it on the phone. And he asked me how to, told him that I have one cousin needs a little help. Your father says to me, well, how much do you think I should give? Right away, without thinking. And he gave a nice donation. And I thanked him for it. He said, what are you thanking me for? It's family. And my cousin called me because I called Israel and told a friend of mine that somebody's going to come to her, she should give him this money. And when she comes here, but she is now, I'll give it back to her. And when my cousin called me, she says, you don't know, I was able to make a beautiful yontif. See, that's what we are taught, Ephraim. That is Judaism. That's what we are taught. Think about it. A Jewish woman for over 2,000 years, more longer than that, has not killed a chicken. Even the reform. I mean, in Poland, my aunt was a communist, but she would not kill a chicken. She couldn't do it. We're taught not to kill. It's been bred out of us. We were hunters and killers like everybody else. I could not shoot an animal. Not even if my life depended on it. That is Judaism. And can you imagine what blasphemy that people went out and killed millions in the name of God? And that is what when you think about it, that is what hurts. I'll tell you a little story about a family. Name is Rosen. Two families. One is Szczyki and one is Rosen. Szczyki's daughter got engaged to Rosen's boy. They were very close. When the war broke out, this Szczyk, before the war, was a very wealthy man and a very nice man. When the war came, he had one of his people that he had supported for all their life. They were like, he built a bunker in the woods. And he made a deal with this guy, he should bring him food every. The Szczyk family, all of them went into that bunker. The Rosen family, the father and 3 sons, went into the bunker. The mother, they had one daughter who's still alive, and 2 sons were already in the Kaushina ghetto. So they were supposed to go out and smuggle themselves over, but it was too late. The mother and the daughter went to a camp called Szczycki. It was just like Pionki. The 2 boys, the 2 men, went to a camp called Starchowice, all in our area. Sometime in 1943, I don't know the date, the Poles went and set fire to both sides of the bunker. And burned the 2 families alive. One Rosen managed to run out, but they chased him and they caught him. And he got killed. When the war was over, the 2 brothers that were in camp survived. Dufce was the oldest, he's passed away already. The younger one was about my oldest sister's age, about 3 years. So when the war was over, he was 20. He went on a train to go back to Poland to see what happened, if he can find anybody from the family. He got killed on the train and thrown off. So here, this woman survived, and out of 6 children, 3 survived, and 1 after the war was killed by the Poles as well. So when people say to you, "But why did you go like sheep?" What was there to do? To fight, you need weapons. To fight, you need help. To run away, you need where to be able to run to. That's why I say that the story of the Holocaust has not been told. The problem now is, for young people like you, me it doesn't matter anymore, but my children it does, definitely my grandchildren. It is again in vogue to hate Jews, but they don't hate the Jews. They just don't like the Israelis. Why? Because they just are not used to a Jew shooting back. And the Israelis shoot back. It's a question that I don't know whether it's ever going to be answered. Because you can't even blame it on religion. There were a lot of non-religious Christians, or they weren't even Christians, they were atheists, who didn't like the Jews. Not all the Jews are nice people. I'll be the first to admit. There's a lot of them I don't like. But who says, where is it written that we should be the only race that would be righteous people, all of us? It's not written, it's a natural thing. A mother has 6 children and 2 may be bad. Same mother, same father. Where is it written that we have to be 100%? This is the terrible problem of being a minority. And that's why I say that when I said to you before, that's why I feel comfortable in Israel. Do they do everything right there? Of course not. Mm-hmm. Well, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions like that? I think we got a lot of stuff. We're like almost 2 hours.